Hello, and thank you for joining us for the first episode of the Digital Transformation of the Legal Industry webinar series. This episode will examine the question, what is digital transformation for law practices? This is the first episode in an 8-part series. A recording of the webinar and the slides will be made available to all registrants. Feel free to enter any questions using the Q&A feature in the Zoom menu. We invite you to follow us on LinkedIn to see news about other upcoming webinars. And with that, I'll turn things over to our moderator.
Hey, thank you, Michelle, and welcome everybody to our webinar series on digital transformation. We're lucky today to have another great lineup of digital transformation experts, and I really mean that everyone in this panel has a lot of experience with digital transformation, either in general or specifically in the legal field. So back with us again is Manjeet Rege, who's a PhD and director of the Center of Applied Artificial Intelligence at the University of St. Thomas. Manjeet also is a thought leader in his field and a frequent public speaker on big data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence technologies. He also is a co-host of the All Things Data podcast that brings together leading data scientists, technologists, business model experts, and futurists to discuss forward-thinking strategies to utilize, harness, and deploy data science, data-driven strategies, and enable digital transformation. And also Dan Yarmuluk is with us today. Dan also appears frequently on the All Things Data podcast. Dan is also with the University of St. Thomas. He's an adjunct professor. Dan also is in the industrial sector doing Internet of Things, digital transformation, and is an entrepreneur himself and is familiar with the nitty gritty of how to get companies to do digital transformation. We're lucky today to have Ann McCracken with us, who's the Black Hills IP president. And Ann who was formerly of the Schwegman firm and has been in the IP field for a number of years, and now is essentially specializing in what you might say is digital transformation through Black Hills IP, which specializes in automation technologies. And joining her is Mary O'Malley, also from Black Hills IP. We're very lucky to have Mary today. Mary formerly was Director of Patent Operations at eBay Corporation. And now she actually is working with Black Hills IP as an IP operations subject matter expert. Mary is very familiar with the back office of IP practices and also with the various digital transformation efforts that eBay did and automation efforts that they undertook over the years. And also from Black Hills IP, Thomas Marlowe, who's a former Chief Patent Counsel of Fairchild Semiconductor. Tom's the president of the renewals of Black Hills IP and works also running all the technology groups at that company, and also very familiar with digital transformation types of things. So let me just kind of give a big picture. Well, welcome to all the speakers first, and thank them in advance for their presentations today. But let me kind of just give a little bit of a big picture, broad brush view of kind of what we're going to try to achieve with this webinar series. Digital transformation is the current, sort of rubric buzzwords, used for the next phase, I guess I call, of law firm automation. And thinking about this for today, we often are trying to orient ourselves in the big picture, the long view, long history of the IP practice evolution, or just law practice evolution, period. And, I started thinking about it, and I think about it in this way, which is really up to this point in time, most of the innovation in law practice has got to do with improving tools that are communication tools, data storage tools, mainly tools that didn't inherently have their own intelligence. They were, you went from mail to maybe the telegraph, and you went from, the telegraph to the fax machine, and you go from the fax machine to email. Those are all just different ways to send messages. They don't really imbue any knowledge into the process. And in the same way, we went from typewriters to word processing machines to, some of the original transition there was to $40,000 word processing machines. And of course, now they're ubiquitous, but again, it's a tool improvement. You're really not getting smarter word processing machines. They just do more things easier, faster. And now we're kind of into, the next phase, I would say, of a digital transformation where we actually are having the tools replace the thinking that humans are accustomed to having a monopoly over in the IP practice and generally in the legal practice, and making this really truly different, qualitatively different period of time that we're entering. And and I would just, we're going to go through this in detail with future webinars, just in terms of practical what it really means. But I would just say this is that we're now at a point in time where we've got so many tools that lawyers can use to amplify, to magnify, and paralegals to use to basically generate way more output, that it's become almost overwhelming. And I see the practice of the future really being one of mastering the various different tools as much as it is, adding the legal knowledge that needs to be added. But nothing will ever replace creative thinking and analytical thinking, for some time to come anyways. I think we all are going to not have to worry about that anytime soon, but certainly it's going to be important to know how to use all these tools that we can use. So with that, let me just turn it over and let Manjeet go. And that just kind of sets the stage for the whole webinar series in general. Manjeet, you want to take it from there, please?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Steve. So I want to begin talking about, kind of just take that thought further that Steve was talking um, about, uh, we have heard about this quite a lot in the media, in the news, that in the next few decades, half of the work performed by humans today will be executed by robotics, AI, machine learning, and recognizing that machines match or outperform human performance in a range of work activities, including ones that require some kind of cognitive capabilities. So there have been studies by McKinsey and other research firms out there as well. Now, digital transformation is about customers, about consumers, by finding new ways of gaining access, ensuring customer satisfaction, and not about the latest and the greatest technology. Technology, yes, is a key part of this. It's a major enabler, but not the only part. And again, findings from McKinsey and others have shown that uh, by organizations that have performed a digital transformation are 23 times more likely to acquire customers, 6% more likely to retain customers, and 19 times more likely to be making profit. Now, direct digital transformation investment spending is supposed to approach around $7.4 trillion between 2020 and 2023. Now, a recent study highlights that the top 5 performance-oriented benefits of digital transformation are as follows. There is a 75% lift in customer engagement, 63% improvement in customer satisfaction. There is a higher digital traffic of 53%, increased lead generation, and greater conversions of those leads as well. So all this shows how digital transformation increases productivity and helps companies to enhance overall customer experience. Now, what is legal digital transformation? The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted multiple industries, including healthcare, travel, financial welfare, and political stability of nations across the globe as well. Restrictions on movement have also affected the legal industry and highlighted the significance of digital transformation in the legal industry. So, digital transformation in the legal industry means digitizing every aspect of the legal experience, including service delivery, workflow, processes, team collaboration, and client engagement. By 2030, we will see significant legal work being done by machines. Now, by that, we don't mean complete elimination of humans, but legal services will be fundamentally different than today in terms of both job function and the way legal services are provided. Although a human side of the legal industry remains an important part, digital transformation can effectively improve delivery of legal services in practical and more innovative ways. Therefore, just like other industries, the legal sector is also poised to experience a lot of transformation. Now, however, the pace and flow of work in a traditional law firm may sometimes seem glacial in comparison to the speed that consumers have come to expect from the ever present digital tools in their daily lives. Also, the legal industry tends to lag in technology adoption compared to other industries. Recently, though, legal practitioners are taking a note of the many digital tools now available to deliver an always on, always connected experience to both clients and employees. Historically, digital transformation has been under discussion in other industries for years, and now the legal industry is catching up. For the legal industry, what is beyond question is the growing trend of law firms investing significant resources to advance the integration of innovative technologies and methods across their practice groups. Just like most of the world, law firms have also made the transition, depending more than ever on technology to drive efficiency. The transition to digital environment has been easier for organizations that had already invested in technology solutions and tools over the last few years. The legal industry was marked by a time of automation from 1960 to today. While that still continues, the pivot now will be from automation to transformation in the future. Gartner recently surveyed 340 corporate in house legal departments, and 33% reported that the biggest concern for executive leaders is increasing the speed of legal work. Gartner's research also revealed that one quarter of respondents experience speed improvements over 50% will with automation. Some reported similar improvements up to 90%. And beyond that, 89% reported that their organizations had met or exceeded their expected ROI after legal automation implementation. So, why the hesitation from the legal industry to embrace technology? Gartner says that its uh, data suggests that many organizations are just too cautious when investing in legal department automation. On average, the time to recoup financial investment in automation is around 2.4 years. A clear example of this is the use of contract management technology or lack thereof. Another significant evolutionary time for corporate legal teams is the present COVID-19 pandemic era. In the midst of it, it was found that almost 80% of organizations are suffering moderate to severe impacts to their contracts and trading relationships as a direct result. About 62% of mid-large organizations with over 500 million in annual revenue continue to use manual methods for their contract management processes and do not have any meaningful automation that supports contract management. So, business leaders are now remarkably open for investment in legal services. Let me now talk about how do you achieve that in terms of tools. First one, a cloud-based enterprise resource planning. So today's cloud-based ERP platform can provide a valuable starting point to harness the power of centralization to increase information transparency and decrease administrative costs. An ERP system centralizes key elements of a case in one system, including the initial client engagement, invoicing and billing, time tracking, talent management. So a lawyer or a paralegal accesses the ERP and retrieves relevant data for a case. Powered by analytics, the system could be configured to automatically analyze a new matter and designate the best lawyer for the task. This kind of a data driven decision making frees up legal staff to tackle more strategic work. It also provides an excellent platform for collaboration as the system will automatically tag the appropriate person to handle the workload. Machine learning and predictive analytics. Industries, are becoming more and more impacted by digital transformation, and law is just one of them. New technologies like AI, automation, and big data are changing the way businesses work and streamline operations. Over the past few years, AI has been proving extremely useful in the legal industry by making legal research more efficient. More and more legal teams are willing to adopt and implement end to end legal technology that can be deployed out of the box. And with AI embedded into latest technological solutions, legal teams now have the potential to digitally transform themselves, completely becoming far more efficient and effective than ever before. So, when it comes to big data, the legal industry is able to benefit from predictive analytics. For the legal sector, however, if the data is a big challenge, right? So, inflated data volumes present a different challenge altogether. So legal advice is only as good as the information upon which it is based. So in order for information to be useful, it must be accurate, up to date, and complete. And the present day lawyer must wrestle with this challenge and strike the appropriate balance between speed and thoroughness. And that is where machine learning can help out with that. Robotic process automation. So the use of RPA also helps streamline law operations by automating repetitive, time consuming tasks such as drafting contracts and preparing documents. It helps lawyers and legal experts organize all the legal documents into a single system, allowing them to maintain multiple versions and generate customized documents quickly. So, with document automation, you can automate the processing of complex contracts and agreements by generating sophisticated document templates that can be easily modified with details related to the deal, for example. Contracts are the lifeblood of a modern business. So it stands to reason that organizations function far better when contract generation and management are fully optimized. Legal technology in the form of contract lifecycle management systems allow lawyers to serve clients quicker and even expand services to whole new markets. That is because they can access contracts and related documents wherever and whenever they want. So, think about a centralized smart repository, AI analytics, and so forth. Legal professionals have to carry out exhaustive background checks and read documents deeply to reveal information regarding their cases. The data collected by legal experts can be used to facilitate better decision making and providing sound counsel to clients. Now, AI uses algorithms to analyze data and extrapolate patterns and insights from the data. For example, an associate typically spends hours combing through research to find a particular document or a case relevant to an argument. So, with the help of AI powered software, the associate could begin the search process by flagging only relevant documents, and the technology would automatically search for such relevant documents and case files. AI enabled chatbots, right? So we all have been exposed to chatbots in the different web services that we use. So clients accustomed to performing most transactions via smartphones may expect the same level of access from their legal counsel if you end up using a chatbot. And many law firms and corporate departments are adding a chatbot to their websites. So a potential client may log on and type in a question like, what are my rights in something, or how do I set up a will? And a chatbot can easily guide them to an appropriate resource within the website, or instructions on scheduling a consultation with an appropriate lawyer. So people can initiate an online chat with a virtual legal assistant or a chatbot to get a quick help if they require. Now, key considerations for legal digital transformation. First is measuring ROI. Although traditional digital initiatives are aimed at saving money and ramping up productivity, the benefits of digital transformation may be more difficult to measure with the usual metrics. For example, deploying an app that allows stakeholders to instantly connect with lawyers will increase transparency and responsiveness, but might not necessarily deliver an easily quantifiable ROI. So, what's the right measure for customer satisfaction or customer experience? How would these metrics lead to an expanded client base and lower client attrition? So, that is something that one has to always look at, not use the traditional metrics. Second is technology augments, not displaces the practicing lawyer. So one of the natural, obstacles to innovation is the fear that technology will replace humans and leave large number of lawyers unemployed. Although those suspicions of technology developments might fear that machine learning would replace the need for humans, in most cases, this technology only frees up time spent on some of the more labor intensive and time consuming tasks. Data driven decision making adds more value in the form of solving complex queries or automating transparency through timely reporting. Finally, digital transformation is here to stay and will revolutionize the law industry. Upskilling is extremely important at the rapid rate at which technology is advancing. So, upskilling and reskilling lawyers and legal professionals in this new technologies are essential for law firms and businesses to thrive in an era of digital transformation. Law firms and legal departments that leverage digital tools can successfully distinguish themselves from the increasingly competitive legal landscape. When used as a as a complement to the human factor, right? We're not eliminating humans completely. Digital innovations can enhance productivity, cut workflow friction, and allow legal practitioners to deliver more skilled, efficient service to their stakeholders. With that, I'll hand it over to our next speaker, Dan Yarmuluk.
Thank you, Manjeet. Coming from the industrial world, it's a little bit different than professional services or legal, and we're talking about legal automation. But I'd like to level set what's happening in this world today. And this chart comes from an article and an analysis at Inc. Digital and Forbes about a VUCA world, a VUCA. And that stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it reigns in a digitally transforming world because change is now constant. And this was developed, this VUCA world was used by the US Army War College to depict these uncertain conditions after the Cold War that didn't traditionally meet war game scenarios. And it's an apt description today for the upheaval across society, politics, business, etc. So while we know that change is constant, less than 1 in 3 organizations believe that to be the case. And you can see on the professional services line, only 32% are leveraging that idea. And of those that are, they're thriving and crushing their digital transformation goal if they're leveraging it and leaning in. So another interesting chart that I'd like to present comes from a book from Tom Friedman. Thank you for being late. An Optimist Guide to Thriving in the Age of Accelerations, in which he was speaking to the Google Moonshot Lab director, Astro Teller. And historically, the technology curve and the human adaptability curve were trending in the same direction. And this is the first time in human history that we've seen that curve accelerate past our ability to adapt. You know, these are these deceptive technologies that are esoteric in the background. We thought Twitter was cute way back when, only to become extremely relevant in our politics in the last 2 elections. So if you lean in, you can see that tremendous opportunity in the green shaded area for you to increase market share and not be digitally disrupted, because we know the Fortune 100 of 20, 30 years ago is drastically different than it is today. Now,
Dan, if I might interject, this Steve Lumberg, a little color commentary on this slide. That green shaded area, to me, in part represents all of the tools that you can currently take advantage of in the legal practice that are, that most people don't use. And it's like there's about 50 new ones every year now. And just keeping up with the rate of release of those new tools is just overwhelming. And if you go back to the left side of that curve, it was like, hey, well, they have a fax machine now. That was the big deal. I mean, that was like 5 years worth of technology development for the legal practice was the fax machine. And then another 5 years go by and, oh, they've got this electric typewriter. So, I mean, the rate of change and tools available was so slow. And now it's just incredibly different time that we live in. And I just want to put some practical meaning to that graph because it is absolutely dead on. Thanks. Go ahead.
That's a great point. Manjeet mentioned cloud-based ERP. These are enabling layers of technology, cloud, setting up a data pipeline, a data lake, a data mart, machine learning. These things are available horizontally across all organizations, as Steve is mentioning. So I encourage people to not be so intimidated by them, harness them, because they're available for all through cloud-based services like we know Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. So in the industrial realm, it's not different than other traditional industries. We have quality controls for manufacturing certain process type elements. And what we have to do is look at various scenario chain, value mapping, process flow mapping, and we can look at drivers or strategic options and scenarios to map the key benefits. A lot of them in manufacturing is about production, overall equipment effectiveness, what is your yield, improving your productivity and efficiency. But those process flows to reduce costs or streamline or speed up is not too much different in the professional sphere. So if you break it up and look at your constituent or your particular workflows in unison, you can make sense of this and start seeing this world of centralized cloud data pipeline, machine learning, and opportunities. So we encourage people to look at these or harness partners that can do those type of analyses or process improvements. And with that, I'm going to pass it to our next speaker, Mr. Tom Marlowe.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I really like this slide, and what I'm going to do as this next slide comes up is overlay kind of this analysis on operations optimization from a high-level view in the IP legal perspective. So the column on the left, this is a little bit different for the IP legal industry, but I think nonetheless impactful. What's interesting is that there is these days not necessarily a shortage of talent. Well, I should say there's really no shortage of experienced talent. In fact, we're seeing more seasoned attorneys in the marketplace than in the past. Like you can take a look even at just like the curve of PTO reg numbers, for example. And these types of trends can kind of make the traditional partner associate arrangement trickier, right? And also impact kind of how things work on the marketplace. There's, you pair that with also this continued demand, and in many cases, growing demand as patent filings continue and increase, along with a pressure a lot of times from clients towards reduced pricing. It's kind of an interesting setup. And all of this, though, ends up equating to doing more for less while leveraging experienced talent. Experienced talent typically meaning higher billing rates. So you really have to do more with less time. It's all a really interesting scenario, but one which lends itself to that efficient use of attorney time being the critical component. And from a business perspective, this should be your higher margin type billing and invoicing as well. So optimizing that is frankly good business. Along with being able to improve quality and keep clients happy at the same time, it all kind of points you in the right direction. So you'll notice that the middle columns here largely still continue to apply. In the operational optimization, you get the benefits on the right by kind of applying those middle steps to the drivers that we're seeing in our industry, even though the drivers are a little bit different from, say, like the industrial space. Reducing costs, reducing risks, getting efficient workflows, making the most out of the time that attorneys are going to spend, making sure that they aren't spending time frivolously. All of these things add up to the benefits that you look to get out of these optimizations. Okay, so then if we take a look then at what are some of these opportunities for optimization, practice innovation, digital transformation, like we're talking about, a lot of these can be obtained by leveraging innovative workflows, tools, service providers, outsourcing, with a focus on the categories here at the top. Typically, they're going to break down into attorney tasks, paralegal type tasks, and administrative type tasks, and you can you can kind of picture how those flow across some of these example categories that are listed. So for example, if we just kind of dive into a couple of these real quick, on the invention disclosure side, these could be tools that take technical documentation and help identify potential areas for invention disclosure creation. In addition, it could be tools that leverage search for invention disclosure submissions to help patent committees make informed decisions. Of course, search then also finds its way into the drafting side of things as far as getting prior art. So optimizing what you can get on the front end there. And then of course, drafting, we've seen tools that exist now that help automate the drafting process, or at least get you most of the way there so that the attorney focuses on the places where he or she can add the most value. And we could go down through this list and add additional examples, because given, as what's been mentioned already, given the speed of technological and I would say and process advancement in this industry, it's easy to find multiple examples of ways to optimize, each and every one of the items on this list, either through tools or outside service providers, or a lot of times even just kind of looking inwardly at the process that you have and identifying areas for automating pieces of it.
And Tom, this is Steve Lundberg, I might just sort of like add a little bit here that the opportunities for, especially for what we'd call the more advanced digital transformation, are probably stronger and more ripe when it comes to decision-making that is more cut and dried or rule-driven and includes or requires less creative input. So drafting the patent application, the core elements of that involve a lot of creativity in taking an invention disclosure and maximizing its patentability and maximizing the coverage you get for it. Those types of activities are difficult to automate, but helping someone with the more mundane robotic tasks of converting, method claims to apparatus claims and things, a lot of time can be saved on that. It's not as much advanced, what do you call AI type of work, but there's still a lot of stuff going on there. But many of these other areas are things that are really done with a cut and dried set of rules for the most part. And I think there are a lot of those jobs that just do that repetitively are going to have opportunities to get automation to help speed up the productivity of that type of work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And basically, any time that you're faced with a situation where, as a professional, you're saying, "Am I leveraging my years of expertise or the skills that I've gained for this particular task?" And if the answer is that I could just as easily teach someone or a computer to do it in a short amount of time, then you're probably not, and you're probably not getting the value out of that task by, doing it yourself.
And I might add one more before we move on to this. I might add one more comment that's sort of a big picture comment, which is, if you, and I guess by sort of crude analogy, you go back to the day of the horse and the buggy, and the horse and the buggy were very well adapted for moving over rutted roads and muddy terrain and so on and so forth. And along came the automobile, which was obviously not as good going over unfinished roads or improved roads. And so the automobile comes along, everybody can see the potential, but really didn't reach its maximum potential till there were roadways built. And I think what's happening now in the world of law is that the connection of all these data sources is getting stronger and stronger. It's like the highway system. The data is moving around a lot faster, with a lot less friction, allowing the automobiles, if you will, to do a lot more than they used to do. So AI is like a car. It really runs on information, which is the roadways. And now the roadways are getting extremely well built out. So you're going to see that car, if you will, become much more prevalent in, in the near future in terms of what it can do. You want to, Tom, are you done or you got one last?
Yeah, that covers my slide. Yep.
So we're going to go to Mary O'Malley and Ann McCracken to talk about sort of the corporate perspective on this and how to actually kind of think about doing projects in the digital transformation sphere.
Thanks. So let's talk a bit about implementing automation in corporate legal departments. Thinking about everything we've covered so far in this presentation and how you can actually get started with digital transformation, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Often the people that are tasked with these projects don't have technical backgrounds. You can start by simplifying. Just think about where your team spends their time. Look for ways and workflows that you can make simpler, more effective, and focus on ways that you can, and focus on things you can automate whenever possible. By automating your repetitive and predictable tasks, you'll find time for more substantive work and reduce your costs. So let's talk about getting started. Where do you start? Again, start by reviewing your workflows. Identify pain points, look for ways to simplify or eliminate them. Ask why you do things. Are there better ways to do things? Are there areas you might automate or even outsource? Does your software support automation? Does your software integrate with other software? For example, can your docketing system share information with your billing software? This would eliminate the need to enter manually data into two separate systems. Get input from your team members. Get the team invested in the process of automation and in the outcome.
Mary, I want to jump in here for a second. That was a great list, and I just have a comment on workflows. There's a quote that I love from the former CEO of IBM, Ginny Rometty, and she said this a few years ago. It was in the context of AI, but it could be applied to any type of automation. She said, one of the reasons why some people say they haven't gotten as much value from AI is that the workflow didn't change. And in this process of taking on a project and examining your workflows, I encourage people not just to look at the step or combination of steps that you're wanting to automate, but look both upstream and downstream in your workflows, because for the piece that you're automating to be successful, you can't just drop an automated part or set of steps into an otherwise manual workflow and expect everything to work as is. You usually have to think about what's coming in from the upstream side and then what it's feeding to in terms of system and people and processes downstream. So just encourage you not only to look at the workflow that parts that you're going to automate, but the whole workflow to have a successful project. So Mary, how do you go ahead and start a project?
So the first thing you need to do is make a plan. Meet with your team. Have them compare their pain points, their wish lists, or their tasks they would like to stop doing completely. Get input from everyone. This is critical. Prioritize the list of areas for improvement. And I would suggest that you start with the low-hanging fruit, the things that you can easiest automate. For example, if you're manually generating the same reports over and over again, set up templates and program them to run and email automatically. Better yet, set up dashboards where those reports can be easily accessed by other team members and run on demand. Determine your next steps based on the list of priorities and document them. Make someone responsible for the follow-ups and make sure, most importantly, everyone understands and supports the time commitment that will be involved. Once all of this is done, you can schedule a follow-up meeting that will include all decision makers. So now you have your list of follow-ups. What's next? You investigate everything. Take your time. Take a fresh look at best practices. Talk with your peers in other legal departments. What are they doing? You can get great ideas in user groups and conferences. Schedule demos with potential new vendors. Can you automate? Can you outsource? Look at tools that will allow people to be more self-sufficient. For example, if you're looking at new docketing systems, do they have dashboards that can be configured to display commonly used metrics in your company? Can they be accessed or exported by anyone that needs access? Can you post links to commonly used reports so that people can run them whenever they need them? Meet with your internal business partners. Are you duplicating efforts? Can your systems share data? This is a critical one for me. This is one that I found most important. Meet with your IT support team. Often, IT support is the biggest stumbling block in corporations. How will their budget and their roadmap affect your projects and progress? Looking at all of the things you've just gone through, if it's not possible that any of these things will work out for you, can you build internal tools that centralize information from multiple databases? Next, it's time to present your findings to the team. You've done your work. Be sure to include any time savings, cost savings, setup costs, etc. Demonstrate how automation is going to benefit individuals, the team, and the company. Give examples of how automation can raise your team's profile. In my prior job, using data from our docketing system and automatically sending it to our corporate communication system, we were able to implement badges on our internal website that displayed the number of patent applications and patents issued for our inventors. Employees could click on those badges for more detail on their inventions. This resulted in recognition for inventors, recognition for the patent team, and it celebrated our company innovation. Finally, discuss time commitments, and there will be time commitments. What will the time commitments be initially, and what will the time commitments be over the long term? Last steps. You've done all your due diligence. Now it's time to implement. Establish the team responsible for implementing your transformation. Make sure to include members from all necessary departments. Remember to include your IT, your finance, and your communications people. Establish definitive project deadlines, establish a budget, meet regularly to give progress reports, and set up training once you've implemented new processes. Finally, highlight and share your successes.
Okay, so Mary, that was a great set of steps to get people started. So with that, I want to challenge everybody listening to this webinar to automate at least one of your operations tasks or processes over the next 3 to 6 months, depending on how big of a task that you take on. If you're just beginning your digital transformation journey, then start with a simple task, the low-hanging fruit. Things like implementing a tool such as DocuSign to automate the process of getting documents signed can make a big difference, especially if you use it for something like sending the paralegals sending documents to the attorneys to sign for filing, or maybe externally sending engagement letters to new clients to sign, or even in the corporate environment. You know, if you have documents like powers of attorney or contracts that VP or other management level people have to sign, and they have no admins to help them out now that they're working at home, DocuSign or a similar tool will make a huge difference. Another thing that is a great starting point, if you haven't done this yet, is to create document templates for common documents like office action responses or client report out letters. Another approach that you could take for this challenge is make sure you're taking advantage of the legal tech that you already have, but you might not be using. For example, are you using all the functions in your docketing system? Do you have reports that somebody's logging in to run on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis that can be scheduled? Many systems have the ability to schedule a report and automatically run and send it out to a list of users. Or reference management. This is a huge time sink. People do this in very cumbersome ways, keeping track of references for IDS purposes on really clunky spreadsheets. But many docketing systems, Foundation IP is just one of them that I can think of, have good modules to keep track of the references that have been cited and or that need to be cited. So you're not using the tech that you already have. Start using that. Now, if using technology is not new to your firm or your department, then go for something bigger. Automate something that your team spends a lot of time on. There are many studies that show, and I've seen this in my own experience, that 25% or even as much as a third of the staff time in law departments and law firms is spent on repetitive administrative tasks that can be automated. So consider, for example, your docketing process. Break that process down into the individual steps. How much time, ask yourself or ask your team, how much time does your team spend on things like this that are most likely manual tasks? So is your current process right now done by people? And if so, how much time do they spend downloading documents from the Patent or Trademark Office? Do they have to by OCR any of those documents? Are they creating PDFs of emails or things that aren't in PDF format? Are they tediously renaming those PDFs to have a standardized naming convention for the individual file? How much time do they spend reading through lengthy emails and communications to determine what the heck this thing is, to know what to docket? Much time do they spend selecting and determining what actually needs to be updated in your docketing system? Or the manual process of keying in the activity, the dates, the bibliographic information into your database, or one that really takes a lot of time is the uploading of those documents into a docketing system or a DMS. And then are you even having enough time and resources to do second eye review or some kind of quality control? Are you just skipping that because you don't have enough time? And then the process to report out those communications to your internal attorneys and staff, or even to your clients. And then just the weekly and monthly reports. Most organizations do many or all of those steps with their team manually, but all of that can be automated. And that's the kind of stuff that at Black Hills, we spend a lot of time. We specialize in using technology to take these processes that have historically been done by people and turning those into automated processes so that we can help organizations free up staff time so that they can use the staff for maybe things that could be billed if you're a law firm to your clients, or just to increase the speed of the processes. So if you accept my challenge, and I hope you do, let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear from you. I love talking about processes. I love legal operations, and I'd love to hear what you do and how it goes. So over the next 3 to 6 months, take on the challenge of automating at least one process, no matter how big or small. Start there, start with something, and let's hear how it goes.
And hey, thank you. There was a question I wanted that was addressed to you that I wanted to make sure you had time to answer.
Uh-huh.
So the question is what do you think about DocuSign for inventor oath declarations or for inventor assignments? And what if an inventor becomes adverse to the company at a later time? Could the DocuSign be challenged? You know, I actually, we've done a lot of research on that, so maybe it would be easier for me to answer.
Yeah, why don't you take that, Steve?
Yeah, so to the question, or the person asking the question, we have looked into this pretty extensively at Schweigman. And I think what the simple answer is, if your assignments or oaths or declarations, if you will, are only to be enforced inside the United States, there's a good deal of comfort that DocuSign, is going to be recognized as, as valid as a wet signature, if you will. We have 100% confidence in that, and Schwegman does use DocuSign for, many documents of that type. However, when you get outside the United States, it gets a lot more complicated, and there are multiple layers of laws and regulations that apply to electronic signatures in different jurisdictions. And the EP, has a couple different, somewhat conflicting regulations on electronic signatures. So if you do have to get an assignment for outside the US, we always recommend you get a wet signature, just to be safe. But definitely if you just have to get something that's enforceable in the US itself, then certainly DocuSign works great. And they do purport to have provide you all of the documentation that they have research they've done to validate that. But we found that while they do have some research, it's pretty sketchy outside the US. Then there's another question here. Non-standard data makes automation harder. How bad is the standardization problem in law firms? And actually, I'll take this one too. If our other speakers want to chime in, I'd be happy to have them. But what the biggest driver currently of automation possibilities is better standardization of data that you need for some stuff, at least in IP. I can't speak to outside the IP space, but because we now have direct access to US Patent Office pair records, we have direct access to EP, their equivalent pair system, EP register system. We have direct access to various other databases, the IP5 databases, and there's a lot more uniformity of data. But more importantly, you need to have instantaneous access to a lot of that data to drive IP processes, because you can't drive a process like to report out something internally that the client expects to get the day after you receive it, when the database that you'd like to automate from updates a week later. So there's timing issues involved that, kind of slow down automation. But even there, we're seeing a lot better real-time updates to pair systems around the world. And I'm just giving one example for pair as patent application information retrieval system, essentially online patent application data. So I do think non-standard data is an issue, because we run into that still with a lot of people in their docketing systems. And I know different clients will store data in different formats, especially serial numbers, and that causes a lot of problems because we can't match up the serial numbers directly when we're trying to automate some data upload. And so that can cause issues. So there are issues around that. And another question is, basic PDF allows for electronic signature. Is there a concern using basic PDF e-signature? I'd add the same answer. I don't think it makes any difference.
No, but I'd like to add to that, Steve. There is an advantage to using a tool like DocuSign or any number of them from a workflow standpoint, because how much time does your staff spend following up after they've sent a document to somebody for signature and waiting to see, have they signed it? Did they get the email back? Sending reminders, hey, I need you to sign that. If that's your situation, you can save a lot of time by using a tool like DocuSign, because it can have programmed reminders. So you can send that document out to the other party to sign and configure it to send reminders daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you want. And then when the other party does sign, it will notify you. So you don't have to have somebody wasting time babysitting that process. And that can help.
Let me add to that, Anna. That's an excellent point, that you probably have better paper trail features on DocuSign maybe than just sending somebody a PDF and saying, here, e-sign this, because DocuSign knows what IP address it sent the email to, and knows what it's coming back from. So I think it tracks some additional information that might become more important if
Yeah.
you get into a dispute.
But if you're just talking about signing it yourself and you're just using basic PDF to apply your signature on your own, nothing wrong with that. But thinking about it from the workflow standpoint and saving administrative time is where I'm coming from with that recommendation.
Yeah, I'll second that 100%. Even just thinking about, okay, well, it's not too difficult to sign a PDF. When you're doing that, you receive the PDF in an email. Hopefully you see it as it comes in and don't lose it underneath the email that we're all getting buried under these days. Then you download it, and then you open it up. Ideally in the preferred editor is Adobe, but if you're on a Mac, maybe it's Preview and you have to tell it to open it up in Adobe. And then you have to go and sign it, and then you save it. Then you go back to the email, and then you send it out and receive a confirmation, hopefully, that it was received by the other party, or if there's a counter signature that's needed, there might be follow-up that's necessary. Versus with DocuSign or Adobe EchoSign or one of these others, it's a button click. And I mean, the time adds up, especially when you think about if something like that just happens to get missed in an inbox and then weeks go by. From a process perspective, like Ann was saying, the benefits can really add up.
Ann, did you want to take the question from Mr. Lucas? Are you on mute, Ann?
Sorry, yes. Okay, so I see a couple in here. Okay, so here's one. We are all solving the same problems. Ultimately, these processes are going to become commoditized. Would it not be better to outsource this to experts like you? Thank you. If we do, can you return the cost savings to clients of Black Hills? So that's a great question. And absolutely, when you really think about what your costs are for some of these kinds of tasks, you have to include not just your immediate labor costs for the time spent to do a particular task for the things I've mentioned, but also look at the training time, benefits, vacation time, all the costs that go into it. And when you can take a process that's very human, like the one I had on my last slide, and convert that over to an automated process, ultimately you do wind up saving time and saving costs. So working with somebody like us, you would absolutely save costs.
Did you see the comment also about using smart contract on blockchain, which seems very fascinating for future innovation? I'm not qualified to comment on that, but it sure seems like a great idea.
I'm not either, but Tom, you've done a little bit of investigating into blockchain. Can you comment on that?
Yeah,
one?
I think, and honestly, I think as far as, if you're predicting what's the future of how contracts are going to work, right? And you take a look at kind of the track record, paper being the only way to do it with, blue ink, going to PDFs being acceptable, going to services like DocuSign. It's clear that a blockchain type backend for storing contracts is the next step. Now, I would expect to see that being implemented by one of the providers that exists, like a DocuSign or an Adobe, because it's the front end of actually doing the signing, confirming identity is still going to be necessary. So it's just about feeling more and more comfortable with the audit trail, with the authenticity of the signature that that blockchain piece is going to get you, so that you can, essentially have that same level of comfort that you might have with a hard copy signed in blue ink. So that's definitely on the forefront, no doubt about it. But it'll likely be the providers that you're going to be working with anyway.
So I think with that, we should probably wrap it up. We've run over 5 minutes, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time, although everybody's free to log off if they need to. But anyways, I want to thank all the speakers. They did a terrific job. I hope we delivered some good insight. And the rest of this series is really going to be now kind of going into the nuts and bolts to really learn more about how, sort of in a case study basis, how Schweigman is using, digital transformation approaches to its practice. And it sounds very simple at the top level, but when you get into these things, the working out of the details of replacing humans in a value chain or doing legal work is really complex, because people are amazingly smart and versatile, and they can do things and so many different things with very little instruction in many cases. And so they're a marvel when you try to compare them to what it's like to get machines to do certain things. So we're going to learn about, over the next few episodes of this webinar series, about how damn hard it is to replace humans, but how you can do it, but not entirely ever. So with that, I'll turn it back to Michelle to wrap this up.
Thanks, Steve. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And thank you to our speakers. And we invite you to come back for the next episode on March 11th, when we examine, just like Steve said, it's an SLW digital transformation case study, when we give an overview of SLW systems, tools, data lake, processes, teams, and personnel. And you can find the registration page on the SLW Institute on the SLW website. And please do keep an eye out for the email invitation as well. Thank you again for joining us, and be well.